Hello and welcome everyone to our 40th session of Hello Casa. Today I'll be talking to Simon Sjöberg from Sweden, who has been living now in Medellin, Colombia for over 10 years. Simon, I'm super pumped to have you today. Why don't you directly introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, thank you for having me and making this interview. I'm from Sweden, 52 years old. I came here to Medellin 10 years ago. Before that, I was basically working in the Swedish government back home in Sweden, and for 22 years or so as in different roles, I would
Hmm.
say. But one of the longest period I had was head of staff that I worked during 8 years. Then I was also working internationally, helping other countries to build up their corrections and probation services. During some years, I've been security officer taking care of the transport for inmates and prisoners,
Hmm.
coordinating this. Also, I'm building up a security system in Sweden nationally for this purpose, and also building up administrative program for uh, basically staff administration. I also been a basketball coach for over 25 years at top national level in Sweden, both women's and men's basketball, mostly women's basketball. And I also worked at high school full time with basketball during a couple of years.
A quick question concerning the security officer role. That means you were working in a prison?
Yeah, I was working directly with the inmates for many years also, and it's kind of different in Sweden comparing to many other countries that we have direct contact with the inmates, and we don't have any weapons
Hmm.
like from USA or other countries that have a different view on probation and prison service.
I think your Sweden is one of the countries where it's the I don't want to say it's the best country to be a prisoner, but it's quite famous to have like highly equipped prisons, correct?
Yeah, it's one of the most important thing is that each inmates have their own room with bathroom and TV and everything. That's a big difference, especially from here in Colombia, where you can be 50 or 60 people in one room, and maybe they don't even have a mattress to sleep on,
Hmm.
or they have to pay for to get a mattress.
Yeah. Um, so then suddenly you moved to Colombia 10 years ago. Give me, tell me the idea of this, let's say, sudden change in your life from Sweden and then taking the first role as a real estate broker and then also foreign in Colombia. How did that work?
Yeah, basically, I met my present wife Carolina while I was working around in Europe,
Hmm.
and we decided that I will come and visit her. So I went here in October 2009, I think it was,
Hmm.
and I was here for 3 weeks and really felt in love with Medellin and Colombia, the
Hmm.
people here, the weather, and everything. So I decided to look into the possibility to stay here for a longer time. At that point, I haven't decided at all if to live here, but I started to look into the possibilities, how to stay here for a longer period, at least.
That's interesting. And then you started with First American Realty in Medellin. And I remember when I was the first time in Colombia and I was looking at brokers in Medellin around like 2011, like almost 10 years ago as well. I think that was like one of the only international foreign brokerage firm or broker in Medellin by that time, correct?
Yeah, actually, yeah, I think it was the first one. Maybe one other guy was here, but he didn't start his business until later.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the reason why I end up in this business was basically because, uh, based on my two careers from back home in Sweden with in the prison system or with basketball, I try to find work here in this both areas. But for the basketball thing was the trouble there was I didn't spoke Spanish at all basically when I
Mm-hmm.
came. So that was the big issue for them with the prison system. I think I had a really good connection with the Swedish ambassador, who was friend with the vice president of INPEC, which is the prison system here,
Mm-hmm.
and he sent a recommendation letter to him, but for some reason he didn't bother to respond to this letter. So, and I tried to personally visit the head office of INPEC here in Medellin, but I think they are really scared to hire foreigners
Foreigner, yeah. Mm-hmm.
into
Yeah.
their system. So that's basically I run out of options. So I visit First American and I ask Rich Holman, who is the founder of First
Yeah.
American, and I asked him if I could start working there. So he told me as soon as you have the local ID, which is called the cedula here,
Mm-hmm.
you can start working here. So as soon as I got it, I went back to him and said, "Okay, Rich, now I have my cedula, so let's start work."
How did it for you? That was definitely like still an industry shift. How was it? How was for you becoming a real estate agent? How difficult was it?
I would say it was pretty difficult in the beginning, but on the other side, I would say because the people here in Medellin are so open and friendly, it was also easier because of that. Because I visit a lot of apartments where people, mostly locals, wanted to sell their units,
Mm-hmm.
and so many families who were friendly. I even in some places I stayed 2-3 hours and
Wow.
had dinner with the family, and it was amazing in the beginning. And unfortunately, eventually I realized I don't have time to do this if I'm gonna sell apartments also. So I
So
cut down on this a bit.
so how was your approach there in order to sell? Did you get leads directly by Rich, or did you really have to do everything on your own? And also your client base, were you directly focused on foreigners only, or were you also hunting for the local market?
No, from First American, they were only focused on basically the American market.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and after a while, they got leads from Australia, some from Europe also, but the majority was from America. And they were providing basically with all leads, but pretty cold leads. So we had
Mm-hmm.
to follow and invite them to communicate with us, and we have to convince them to invest here in Medellin, or at least come here and see the market.
Okay, interesting. That means you were mainly focused on the buyer side and less on the seller side.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Um, you before you said like you fell in love with Medellin. I think it's quite easy to fall in love with Medellin and also in Medellin. Um, for someone who might also be in that situation, saying, "Hey, I've found a partner and I really would like to close everything back home and move somewhere." Do you have any tip on a cultural and also just going abroad basis for someone who's planning to do that?
Yeah, I would say it's very easy to come here because of the people. And for me, from Scandinavia or from northern part of Europe, it's the weather here is like paradise. Today we have between 25 and 30 degrees, sunshine, blue sky. Uh, and for me as a Swede, it's pretty easy to fall in love with a place when the weather is like this every day.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there are downsides, and they have issues here in Medellin also. But I think all the positive things uh, adds up much more than the negative things. And they have, I have noticed now during the last 2, 3 years, or even last 5 years, that the city are very focused in tourism and be open to tourists who's coming here. Um, the tourism itself has been many people has come here because some negative reasons to come here, but that's going away, like um, drugs or prostitutes and these things.
Hmm.
And a good thing. And the city has been doing a lot to prevent this thing or limit these things from increasing. And I think that's very good because Medellin and Colombia has so many good things to offer, and these two areas is not the two things they have to be focused on. They can be
Absolutely.
focused on other things.
Absolutely. You just mentioned the beauty about of Medellin. Give us a little bit some maybe some attractions and sites which you can illustrate what to do in Medellin, because Medellin is famous now for this lifestyle and also being such a great city to live in. Can you give some data where to go, what to do maybe on the weekends, what are good spots to do?
Yeah, I would say for many years, the really Zona Rosa area in Medellin has been in Poblado
Hmm.
and Parque Arvi,
Hmm.
which is probably the first thing that you see when you Google Medellin or something. But now we probably have 20, 30, 40 other areas or places which is even better than Parquieras. Actually, myself and many people who has been living here for years are basically never in Parquieras
Hmm.
because there is so many other places. Near Parquieras, you have a small neighborhood called Provenza, which has some of the best restaurants in Colombia, I would say. And you have several of these places where you have really good restaurants around Poblado and also other areas in Medellin. Then the tourist who's coming here, one of the biggest attractions that many all the tourists basically goes to is Guatape, which is a
Hmm.
big cliff um, where you can climb up. I think it's
El Peñol. Hmm.
yeah, 730 steps up, and then you have a marvelous view from up there. And especially when the weather is good, that like it is almost every day, it's incredible view over 100 lakes they have in Guatape and El Peñol.
Absolutely, yeah.
So yeah,
And also even for me, one of the best attractions around Medellin is Parque Arvi. Just if you don't want to go as far as El Peñol, it's just so beautiful. You just go up the cable car, and then you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere within a few minutes.
yeah,
Um,
and it's
yeah,
incredible that they can have that big forest in the middle of a big town like Medellin.
including the orchards, which are directly on top of the trees, where when you're crossing the trees and crossing the forest. Amazing.
Yeah.
Now, looking back at the 10 years time, which is quite massive. Where do you see the biggest differences which have taken place within the last 10 years?
Uh, I will say it has been a lot of construction, and in the real estate business, as I've been here during 10 years in this business, I can see the quality of the construction is increasing, not
Hmm.
rapidly, but it's increasing anyway. It still has a long way to go until it's in European or American standard, but it's getting better and better. And the other big thing is the tourism. When I came here 10 years ago and was walking in Poblado, I was stopped by the people asking me where I'm from and everything. And now people in Poblado, they don't even bother because there is so many foreigners,
Hmm.
especially in that area.
Hmm.
So and that's also another reason why I don't actually live in Poblado. I live in Envigado, which is
Hmm.
outside.
Yes. How do you see the influx of the foreigners? Obviously, it's on one hand, it's for us as foreigners, it's nice because it might be more accessible. On the other hand, it's boring because you want to go somewhere where not your neighbors are. What do you think is the impact, maybe social but also economic impact on the Colombians and also the Paisas, which who are living there directly in Medellin?
I would say the good thing for the paisas here, the local people, is uh, all these big companies coming from abroad, starting up their business here in Colombia, and providing them with work. And
Hmm.
of course, that also increased their minimum wage, which is a good thing. And I would say that's a positive thing. I think we are still way from having too much foreigners. That are the situation in many other
Hmm.
uh, countries. And maybe it's good that Medellin is not by the sea, for example, because that maybe prevent it to be too much
Hmm.
touristic,
Hmm.
like it in Cartagena, for example.
Absolutely, yeah. It is still in a decent to this decent degree. It is still manageable. Do you see, however, just your frank opinion and what you're observing right now? Do you see already families complaining that they have to move out of the center maybe and going somewhere else because of the high prices which suddenly skyrocket, which you see, for example, in Barcelona or other places in the world?
Yeah, in some situation you can notice it, but it's basically El Poblado is not a big area of Medellin, so there
Hmm.
is other areas that Colombians are interested to buy apartments or properties. So and Poblado is the most interesting area for foreigners, although we have Laureles, Envigado, Sabaneta that are also interesting, but not even close so interesting like El Poblado.
Okay, so
Uh,
you would still say maybe for the audience, El Poblado was in fact the first, let's say, gringo area, if I may say so, and then afterwards it started with, was it first Envigado or first Laureles when where people moved to? How was the evolution of, let's say, the of those neighborhoods?
I think after Poblado, people were looking into Laureles
Mm-hmm.
because the prices were lower there, and Laureles is basically in the middle of the valley and it's flat.
Mm-hmm.
It's different from Poblado, which is very hilly. Um then shortly after that, I think Envigado came, but Envigado is also very popular amongst the Colombians. So the competition in Envigado was a bit harder or tougher than in
Mm-hmm.
Laurel, I would say.
And you yourself, you say you live in Envigado, correct?
Yeah, I do.
Um, Give us some reasons why you chose living in Envigado.
One of the reason is because I'm working with foreigners mainly, and being in Poblado, where a lot of tourists and foreigners goes usually when they came here the first time. Uh, when I came here, I didn't look at myself as a tourist, especially the second time I came here. Then I wanted to explore and experience the Colombian lifestyle. And the Colombian lifestyle you basically can't experience in Poblado
Mhm.
anymore. Some small areas maybe, but it's much different when you go outside Poblado to Envigado, Laureles, or Sabaneta, or other areas.
I see, I see. And can you give us maybe for the audience a few data points on square meter prices which you get for each of those areas which you just mentioned?
Yeah, I would say it's, of course, it would be a generalization because in Poblado you have one price per square meter, and then also it's other factors that goes in here, like what kind of amenities do you have, how old is the building, uh, what location, do you
Yeah.
have balcony, do you have view, how close to big supermarkets or malls, shopping malls, for but for example, in Poblado, I would say it can go from 4 or 5 million pesos up to 12 million pesos. So that's a big range difference depending on all these factors. In
So we are
eh,
talking 2 to 3 thousand. Sorry, 2 to 3 thousand euros, for example, US dollars, more or less, correct?
yeah,
Okay.
almost $2,000 and $3,000 also.
Yeah, yeah.
And Envigado, it's a little bit cheaper. I would say here in Envigado, you can find properties 3 million per square meters, and then but then also because of this competition from the Colombians themselves, you also have exclusive properties. So you can go. Maybe I have seen here 9 million per square meter in Envigado also. But then I have excluded houses, big luxury houses, which can be even more um, or higher priced.
Okay. Rental price wise, if you're also within those ranges, 1 or 2 bedroom apartment for Poblado or and Envigado, what do you have to expect?
If you're renting long term, and in the term long term, I'm talking about 30 days or more, uh, you can get a decent apartment in Poblado for around 1,200, $1,300,
Okay.
which in Envigado you can get around 1,000 or even a little bit lower also. In Sabaneta you can get for 700, 800 also.
Okay. Okay.
And
Um,
Laureles, I would say almost the same level, or between Envigado and Sabaneta level. So something between 700 to 1,000.
okay. Um, Talking now a little bit about your businesses, which I think is super interesting because you evolved from the first American Realty and then now started SuiteMedellin and also have Circumcedo. Tell us a little about your current services and what you're offering right now.
Yeah, at the moment we are very focused on doing medium-sized projects or bigger projects, and at the moment we have 5 projects that we offer our clients, and one of the biggest one is a project in Sabaneta, where we have a big lot with view over the whole Medellin Valley here. Uh, we are doing between 38 to 42 lots where we plan to do houses. basically all the lots has this great view. It's maybe 4 or 5 lots that doesn't have this amazing view. So that's a very interesting project that we are looking for investors to
Mhm.
project, but we have all the licenses. We are basically ready to start sales office and everything as soon as we have the investors on place here.
And the project is a single family houses, or is it going to be apartment buildings? What's the plan there?
No, there is only going to be single family
Oh,
houses.
okay.
Uh, but then we have another interesting project in Poblado, in very good location, close to Avenida Poblado, which is the main street in Poblado,
Hmm.
uh, where we're going to do a 23-story building with
Hmm.
22 apartments, and it's going to be one apartment per floor, 360 degrees view,
Wow.
uh, and probably one of the best view at that level of Poblado. If you go higher up, close to El Tesoro, which is high up in El Poblado, you probably have similar view. But from here, when you can have 360 view, that means you can have mountain view, you can have city view, and you can have the southern view towards Envigado also. So it's going to be a very unique building with exclusive design and very exclusive material we're going to use when we do the building there.
And what's the minimum investment there, which you need in order to take part of it?
For that, the last building,
Yes,
I'm not exactly sure, but it will be around $6 million,
in
something
total. Okay.
in total. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And what do you expect as a rental, or yeah, as a monthly rental price out of this, let's say, super special exclusive apartment?
We're calculating with $3,000
Wow.
amount.
Okay. Okay. Very interesting. Very nice. How do you now, as you said before, I assume you still have the same kind of client segment. So mostly US Americans, Europeans, and also Australians. Do you also see an influx by Chinese people?
No, not really. I would say the difference between during these 10 years, I now see more European people coming here,
Really?
also more Australian people, but the Europeans they are coming more and more.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, Asian people is not that much people coming here at all still, but when they start to recognize Medellin and Colombia as the real estate market, then it will be a huge invasion of interest from these people.
Absolutely. Um, Imagining I'm now interested in saying, okay, I would like to buy something in Colombia. How would that work? How would I work with you, and what would be the next step?
Yeah, if you compare with many other countries, to buy a property or invest here in Colombia, it's very easy. You basically need your passport and the money. Uh, there is still a little bit hard for foreigners to loan money in the banks here.
Hmm.
It's possible, but you need to have the connections.
Hmm.
So cash is still a king here in Colombia, I would say. But we're working with a company called Alianza Valores
Hmm.
that they have account at Citibank in New York. So basically, what you do, no matter if you come from Europe or Australia or Asia, you send your funds to Citibank in New York to the Alianza Valores account, and then when the account are ready, when they have sold the dollars at the bank, they send the pesos to your account in Alianza Valores, and then you have access to buy your property basically in a week or 2 weeks.
Okay, that means I don't even need a local bank account. I just need more or less like to have the contact with Alianza Valores, and then they make like an account with me on behalf or of myself, so that it's more or less like then belonging to the money then belongs to me, or how does that technically work exactly?
Yeah, the account at Alianza Valores is a kind of, they are a security and brokers firm.
Yeah,
So
it's it's like a fiduciary, I assume.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
They also have a section in their company who is a fiduciary.
Hmm.
And, uh, you can keep the money in the account there, and you can use it just contacting them when you need to withdraw money, and they
Hmm.
send. Let's say you buy a property here and you're renting it out. Then of course you have expenses you need to pay, maybe the management company or the administration, the HOA fee. Then you can just transfer the money directly from your account in Alianza Valores to whomever you need to pay. But of course,
Okay.
during the time, it's an advantage to also open a bank account in one of the local banks here in Colombia. But you can do that right away. For example, we have connection with Bank Colombia and other
Hmm.
banks also, so we can help basically all foreigners to open an account instantly.
Would you also help, let's say, transferring the money back to my account? Let's say I actually just want to have a full service and I don't want to travel to Colombia to make sure that everything is running smoothly. Would you also do the administration and the management of that and make sure, like, by the way, this is your monthly rent by your tenant, and we're just gonna transfer that to your account?
Yeah, one solution you can do with some of the management companies is that you send the money from your country directly to their account here in Colombia,
Hmm.
and then they take care of all the fees and everything. And when the rents comes in, they send money from their bank account to your bank account abroad.
Okay, I understand. I understand. Quick question concerning the down payment. How much? That's 20%, isn't it?
Yeah,
Normally?
between 10 and 20. Yeah.
Okay, okay. And financing then would either I would have to manage from my home country. I would have to convince my country here, my bank here in my country to do the financing, or you can say it might be even possible to do a financing with a local bank, but obviously it's much harder because I don't have any credit history. Correct?
Yeah, the most important here is that the local banks here, they expect or they want you to have a history here in Colombia, a bank
Mm-hmm.
history, which you don't obviously you don't have when you're coming here for the first time. But we have good connection with some of the banks, so depending on each case here, we can help out in this cases also. But the foreigners should be aware that the interest is not that low here in Colombia. We are
Yes.
talking about 10 to 12%.
Yes. It wouldn't be the most very clever to do that right now. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and that's quite a difference from Europe and America also.
Okay, so let's say we need the down payment in cash. How much would you say so that it makes sense? How much would I have to have in cash so that I can buy a proper apartment in a nice area of Laureles or Envigado, or even maybe something which has not been increasing that much in worth, in value? Maybe something where you say, okay, it's actually a nice emerging neighborhood.
Yeah, if of course it's getting harder and harder to find these really good deals, and everyone that is coming here are looking for these amazing deals.
Hmm.
Uh, so I would say it's not that hard to find a deal around a $100,000 or 100,000 euro. That's a normal price to find something okay.
Hmm.
But on and if you're buying it as an investment, it's also good to look into which area is the best area to rent out your places. So if you find a very cheap apartment in one of the poor neighborhoods in Medellin, probably many foreigners will not rent it, and maybe many locals will not rent it either.
Yeah.
So you will not get a good ROI doing that. So I would look into the areas which is popular or okay rental wise also.
How is, I think, the value or the value appreciation of the rental prices, but also especially of the real estate price, has kind of skyrocketed in Colombian pesos right now. Like the last 10 years, it almost doubled, correct? In Medellin especially.
Yeah, if we go back 10 years, I think we had a couple of years around 2010, and when the dollar was pretty low also, and it only increased by 5 to 7%. But now for the last, I would say 6 7 years, it has been steady around 10 to 12%
Year
every
over
year.
year. Okay. However, how do you, let's say, how do you overcome, because there's obviously also the currency risk. Right now, the pesos is, I think, at 3,500 almost, like quite depreciated versus the dollar. Even though obviously the appreciation in real estate has taken place, you might face not that much, or even a lower, or even deep depreciation if you're super unlucky. How do you think, or how would be your measurement in order to overcome this risk?
I would say at the moment it's not that big risk, because if we look into the market here, the foreign market in real estate here in Medellin is around 7%. So we are talking about 93% locals are buying in the real estate market here. So the foreign market is still very small. When I came here, it was around 3 4%, and it has increased, but not that much. Hopefully, and I think if you look into the tourist numbers that are increasing fast now, probably the investment market for foreigners will also increase faster now.
Have you had the experience or someone saying, "Hey, I need to sell because I need the money back home, but I can't or I don't want to because right now of the depreciation of the pesos"? Or hasn't is that not an issue, or has that been an issue sometimes for someone who would like to sell again?
I will say the majority of Americans, for example, they don't want to send their funds back to USA.
Okay.
I have, for example, a couple who moved here, or I sold them 2 apartments and start managing both units for them. And then after a couple of years, they came here to live in one of the apartments. So they are still living in that
Wow.
apartment. They now sold everything, all the assets they have in America. And I actually met the guy 2 weeks ago. And now he's doing his application because he's over 62 years. So he's now doing an application to be Colombian citizen
Okay.
also.
Wow.
But I would say the majority of Americans, they don't want to send back their money. And at this time is not a good time either because the dollar is so high.
Yeah.
It's better to reinvest here in Colombia and wait for the dollar to go down. And yeah.
Absolutely. Concerning the reinvesting the dollar or the money locally, do you have any tips on emerging neighborhoods which are not yet that well known in Medellin or the surroundings?
I couldn't hear you in the beginning there. Can you repeat?
Absolutely. Concerning reinvesting the money and which you maybe just obtained from selling one property, or even without that, do you have any tips on emerging neighborhoods in Medellin or around Medellin?
I would say outside Medellin, if you're looking into buy so-called fincas, which is a country house or summer house or whatever you call it, that's I think that market will increase a lot because I still haven't seen any agency that are really good working with these properties, and the prices are still very good if you go outside Medellin in areas that are not so popular amongst foreigners. I would say the only exception is Santa Fe, Antioquia, and San Jeronimo. And maybe, no, I think Guatape is still good prices also. So there is, we can come back to the Colombian market, and the Colombian market is looking into Rio Negro, which is the area international airport. There, I will say the prices are the highest outside Medellin. And now, when they did this tunnel from the airport down to Medellin, it's even higher prices now in that area.
Tell us directly about the tunnel a little bit. That's interesting. I read that on your blog. It's a very interesting explanation. You even talk about what about the material which is being used, and also the appreciation of the value for the audience. Give us a little bit quick description about it.
Yeah, before the tunnel was finished, it took almost 45 to 55 minutes from the airport to Medellin. Now, when it's done, it takes 18 minutes the airport. So many people are now looking into, okay, we don't have to live in Medellin, and we can avoid some of the pollution, because some periods during the year the pollution is bad since we are in a valley here in Medellin, and we still are suffering from some cases old transportation vehicles like lorries and buses who still use very bad diesel or like that. So if you can live up close to the airport, and you can be in Medellin, if you're working in Medellin, in 18 minutes, it's very interesting for many people. You live in a countryside house, and in 20 minutes you're inside a very big city with
amazing. So this is I think this the entire public transport is definitely a huge topic in order to make it more livable and also more accessible for many more people. But that's also the beauty about Medellin, because the cable car has been such an important point of the inclusion of the entire society within Medellin, which I think is, if you compare that to Bogota, has been the key to the success of the city.
Yeah, absolutely, and also all this construction they're doing, I have two in mind. Rio Negro, which is their own city close to the airport, they are also, I don't know if they have started yet, but they are also looking into do some kind of combination cable car or train from Rio Negro down to Medellin, which will take you can take a train then in 20 minutes to the airport from the city here. Then on the other side, the city I mentioned before, or the village, I would say, Santa Fe, Antioquia. You have to pass Santa Fe, Antioquia to go down to the coast, the Panamanian coast, and they are doing several tunnels on the way there. If you go by car down to the coast from Medellin today, it takes 8 hours in car. When they have finished this construction, it will take you 4 hours.
Wow.
So it will be a huge different for people to go outside Medellin and for people to come into Medellin and visit. Everything, it will opens up so much many possibilities.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I totally agree, and I totally agree with if you have, let's say, the little necessary cash and also the breath to wait. I think it's there's so many opportunities. We just got listed one interesting finca in Halocasa for 80,000 US dollars for 80,000 square meters. Humongous finca in Santander with coffee possibilities and stuff. You just
Yeah,
have to then obviously do the work in order to make it interesting for tourism and also have the willpower to invest. But I think it's incredible, you know.
it is. Yeah, yeah, it is. It's very, very interesting, and it's the nature here is also so beautiful. So most of the people in Medellin, when there is so many holidays here in Colombia, it's
Yeah.
like 22 holidays during the year. So and all the holidays is basically on Mondays.
Hmm.
So you get a you can imagine almost half of the weekends are long weekends. So that means that many of the people in Medellin, they have their fincas outside Medellin. So they during these long weekends they go to their fincas and this is something that interests foreigners also to spend the weekends or a couple of days in the fincas.
Yes.
So there is a huge potential in that market, I would say.
Absolutely. I miss the long weekends from my time back in Colombia. I love the Monday off. That was amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I have a question about appraisals. Do you also work with appraisers or do you even conduct appraisals yourself? And are you even suggesting working with those?
Yeah, many of the clients are asking for it, and we are in connection with a couple of companies, one local companies and another international company.
Mhm.
It's not that common that we are doing appraisals though, but it's possible because you don't have an MLS system here, and it's hard to figure out if the value on an apartment is correct or not. So in some cases, if we can't give you a good answer, I would recommend to use a company to do an appraisal, so you get all this number figure out.
Yeah,
Because the more information you have before you go ahead and decide to buy a property, the better it is.
absolutely.
And especially if you're buying something here in Colombia, maybe that's one thing that you want to be sure of, and then and the second thing is you need to be sure of the legal aspects, the history of the property and everything. So I would definitely recommend to use a lawyer or a legal assistant.
No, absolutely. Especially since you mentioned before that it is not as straightforward to say, okay, this is Laureles, this is the price more or less, and here you go. It still depends on so many things. So you can have the same apartment or same area, different apartment, different setup, and there might be definitely some price differences. Um, Once you do such an appraisal, they're also like officially recognized as per you can even use them as a negotiation in front of the bank in order to get a loan or to get a mortgage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Although the banks, they have their own appraisal company that they are using. So
Okay.
even if you have an appraisal and coming to the bank, they will probably say, okay, we will send out our guy to do a new appraisal to
Okay,
make
they
sure.
do their own. Okay. How much is such an appraisal? Does it depend on the market price of the property, or is it a fixed cost as per square meters, or
Now
what
it
is it?
depends on the price on the
Okay.
property. Yeah.
Okay. I have another question concerning taxes.
Yeah.
Not only the transfer taxes, but well, first let's start with the transfer taxes. How much is it if I purchase property? How much do I have to pay to the government?
It depends. The legal fees, if you're referring to that, is for the buyer around 1.5%, more or less. Although I would say now I'm not a tax expert in any way, and
That's fine.
but the most important thing is to know is when you're selling, if you're looking into do the flipping or whatever, is the 2-year rule you have here to avoid the gain the taxes. So
how much is the taxes within the 2 years?
I think it's 10% extra if you sell
Okay.
within 2 years. Yeah.
And extra as per normal one is, do you know that? The normal transfer tax for the seller?
It depends a little bit how
much
how you declare your money in total. If you only have one apartment and you're selling that one, you can put a big chunk of money into your personal assets, and at least I will say up to $20,000 or something is basically tax free, or you don't have to declare your tax.
Okay.
Everything above that you have to declare for it.
Okay.
The 20,000 limit now is not a number now. Now they are basically calculating a certain amount of the minimum wage times a certain number. So that's how they calculate this now.
Okay, so they apply a multiple of the minimum wage. Okay, got it. Is there also an asset like annual tax on the asset itself? Or on the property value, which you which you have to pay anyway?
Yeah, you pay the taxes. Usually it's paid quarterly. And in Envigado, you pay it by each semester. But it's the property tax, and you can pay it in advance, and you get a small discount if you do that. So,
how much is the range, more or less, just to get an idea?
We see we have one apartment that we are selling now for. See how much is it in dollar? 300,000, more or less. And the tax on that one is, I would say, $300 per quarter. So
okay.
$1,200 a year. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, then so then we have an idea. Perfect. Another question you mentioned before, the couple which owned the property and then sold everything in the US and then moved to the same property. I know it from Germany. You can more or less like declare any property which you own for your own use, and then you have the right to ask the tenant to find a different property to live in. How is the right there for the property owner in order to use it for their own?
You mean if they're buying and there is a tenant there, or?
Exactly. After a few years, as the couple, they say, okay, perfect, we buy the apartment, we hold it for right now, the tenant is there, but we might decide in 10 years for our retirement to use it on our own. Is it straightforward and they just have to declare and say, okay, that's for our own usage and there's no discussion about it? Or how is the process there? Do you know that?
Yeah, usually there is no issues. We can go back to this couple because I was managing their apartment that they moved into. So basically, we had a contract with the tenants. It was 3 guys renting the whole place. And when the contract was terminated, we alert them, I think 3 months before it was ending, that the owners were planning to come and stay in the building or in the apartment. So there were no issues. Sometimes when you sell a property and there is a tenant, of course you have to make sure does this tenant has a contract when it is thing. Otherwise, you may risk to end up with a tenant in the apartment, and he has the right to stay there until the termination of his contract.
Absolutely. Okay. Yesterday I was talking. Sorry, I'm bombarding you with questions, but it just pops out, and I hope it's okay. I was actually yesterday talking with someone from Valencia in Spain, and they don't have, which I think is super interesting or it's totally surprising. They don't have a cap on the increase which they can incur to the tenants on a yearly basis. So they can just double it with a new contract, apparently. How is the regulation there in Colombia? I hope there is a regulation, and I cannot just come and say, hey, next contract will be a double or whatever. How are the tenant rights towards the property owners?
Oh, okay, yeah. You of course you have to negotiate with the tenant, and you can't basically change the rent as you wish.
Yeah.
So it has to be fair. But on the other hand, if you start renting out your property, you can put whatever price you want on the
Okay.
property. And then the tenant can, of course, decide if they want to stay there or not.
Yeah. Okay. But I cannot just double it or increase it on my will, or is there a cap? Like for example, right now they think in Germany they are discussing like a cap on how much, or at least here in Switzerland it's like that. There's a cap on how much you're allowed to increase the rental price, so that like there's a certain regulation. Is there any regulation in Colombia, or is it just very, let's say, liberal, and the market is the market and has always right?
During the contract, you can't basically change the rent unless
Okay.
something coming up that you can't affect, like if the government increasing the property tax dramatically or something like that, then you have to, of course, compensate this. But that change will also be an option for the tenant to decide to move out or to stay with the new price. But I have never experienced that. We have never hired the rent during the period when a tenant has the contract.
Yeah.
But between a new contract and the old one, of course, we can negotiate with the owner and with the tenants to increase the rent, but to a fair amount of rent.
Absolutely perfect. Okay, makes total sense. You have now been working as a real estate agent for more than 10 years. What are tips for other real estate professionals working in the entire industry, but also for investors who are considering or have invested, which you might give them here on the podcast?
I would say, I always said, if you are a real estate agent or whatever you do for a living here in Colombia, the best skill you can have is patience, because it's a different culture here, and people have a tendency not to show up on time to the meetings if they show up at all, or they reschedule, or whatever. They can call you 5 minutes after the meeting are supposed to start and say, no, I'm in traffic. I will probably be 2 hours late or something. So having patience is one of the best skill you can have. But as a real estate agent and working with foreigners, I would say be on time, be professional, be open and transparent with everything in the deal. I have experienced some agent from other agencies that has changed the price to make themselves get a bigger commission, which is pretty stupid, because each apartment is in most cases published in several platforms. So it's easy for for anyone who knows how internet works. Just search online, and then they see, okay, this apartment is much cheaper with another agency than this agent told me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I think,
It reminds me of what Marciano said from Bangkok, who I had on the podcast, and said, "Trust is the most important thing, and be honest,
yeah,
because the market is smaller than you think, and reputation for you as a real estate agent is like the most important thing, and don't even try to act unethically because it will just backlash by 5,000 times."
yeah, absolutely. That's totally correct. Also here in Colombia and in Medellin.
So tell us why should people now come and visit the beautiful Medellin? Give us some final thoughts and some final reasons why no one should leave this world and not having visited Medellin.
I will say it's so many cultural things that are so interesting with the South American lifestyle here, and that's one thing. If you haven't experienced South America, there is no reason not to come here. And the other reason is, of course, the weather here is amazing. It's always good weather. When I talk to my friends back home in Sweden, I hear them saying, "No, it's raining, it's cold, or whatever." Then I just have a big smile on my face and telling them what they are missing here. The other thing is living expenses is still moderate here in Colombia. It's even very low on some areas, depending what you decide, where you decide to stay, and how you decide to stay. It's so much things to do here to explore, travel around Colombia, or just staying here in Medellin and experience the big city pulse. Sometimes you don't feel like Medellin is a big city, but it's I think three and a half million inhabitants here in Medellin. So it's a very big city, and
You don't feel it. It's very well organized, and
no,
it's yeah.
in Poblado, for example, you maybe feel it a little, but it also feel like it's kind of a small town in many neighborhoods when you visit, and on top of that, when you have these friendly people here welcoming you anywhere. If you respect the people here, they respect you, and they are friendly, and they are willing to talk and enjoy the time with you here also. So I would definitely recommend everybody to make a visit here. I know I had my friend from Sweden who basically waited 8 years, 9 years before he actually came here. And the only thing he said, but Medellin doesn't have the sea. And then when he finally came here, he only waited 3 months or 4 months, and then he came here a second time. Now he's planning to come here a third time also. So, and he's very, very negative, or he thinks a lot before he take a decision to travel. And even though I was here since so many years, he hesitated to come here. But then when he eventually he came here, and he totally turned. And now he loves Medellin.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also say everyone who has no bad intention, is not interested in drugs or prostitution, has to go and travel to Medellin. Everyone else can stay away. And everyone who wants to come should talk to the people, eat the awesome food, the healthy food, drink a guanabana juice, and just enjoy this beautiful place. It's just a place you have to have visited in your life, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and the culture with dancing with salsa and everything
Yeah,
here is
amazing.
amazing. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. Simon, how can people contact you if they're interested in real estate, if they're interested in anything else. I assume also they just can reach out to you if they just want to have your contact details, and also just chat with you. I assume you're more than happy to receive any sort of contact. What's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, the easiest way will be to contact me through email. I can be reached at simon@suitemedellin.com, or by telephone. Text me a message through WhatsApp or whatever. The country code here is 57, and then it's 321-605-2225, and that's the two easiest way to reach me. And also, I think all my contact info will be on your website, right?
Absolutely. I will put all the information on the description of YouTube, and also I will link the Hello Casa profile to the YouTube, and all the information you have everything will be accessible exactly. Also in the podcast description. Absolutely.
Perfect. And we will also put up shortly our projects and properties there for everybody to see.
Absolutely, yeah, and then they will be visible in the newsletter and in the weekly newspaper letter. Perfect. Simon, do you have any final words for the audience?
No, it's very hard to in words saying why people should visiting here, but it's an amazing town. If you decided to come here, I can promise you will not regret a second to go here. It's amazing town. When I tell people here, do you know how many universities, for example, Medellin has? And they guess, okay, they have 2, 3 or something. No, they have 33 universities. It's so educational people here. So it's amazing. And if you want to have a fun time, no matter, you don't have to drink or whatever, you will have a fun time anyway. It's an amazing experience if you come here.
Absolutely. Perfect. Yes. Great final words, Simon. Thank you so much. I wish you a nice rest of the Friday, and especially a beautiful, hopefully long weekend this weekend. And we talk soon. And I thank you so much for your time for this really interesting interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.